Hello everyone, this is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroyev, and thank you for coming to our chess quiz. Today I would like to demonstrate 5 different games, and your task is to guess who will playing these games. Well, of course, guessing the chess player is a kind of a bonus. I'm sure you'll get a lot of helpful and educational information because by looking at grandmasters or masters games you can definitely get better, especially if you understand the ideas behind the moves. And if you don't understand them, today I'm going to explain everything, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. So please let me know if the sound and video quality is good. So we are waiting for more attendees to come, of course. I am refreshing the page everywhere. I'm streaming this webinar on several platforms, at chesslands.com, of course, on my YouTube channel, Tricks of Chess, on my Twitch channel, which is also Tricks of Chess, and on Facebook. So I'm waiting for your confirmation about the sound and video quality. And we will start in just maybe 1-2 minutes. Okay, looks like everything goes okay. So what your task today is? So there will be 5 different games. I will ask you, for example, who is playing with white pieces. And after I finish all these 5, your task is to provide me with the list. For example, number 1, let's say Vishy Anand. Number 2, Bobby Fischer. Number 3, well, let's say Hikaru Nakamura. Number 4, for example, Jan Nepomniachtchi. Number 5, Vladimir Kramnik, maybe. So, and you should define them by their playing style. So everything will be, we will sum everything up after we finish the analysis of 5 games. However, before we start, let me quickly introduce you to Chesslands. Recently we launched an online chess school. We invited probably, if not the best, then definitely good chess coaches. One of them is Grandmaster, several are Masters, and recently International Master David Fitzsimons from Ireland with perfect English joined our team. So if you are looking for a coach, maybe at this exact moment he is the best candidate after me. Okay, I'm kidding actually. Well, maybe he's better than me, I don't know. Well, actually I know how good he is at coaching and I know his results, but well, it depends on your goals. So if you, for example, are about to become a FIDE master, you'd better work either with him or with, for example, Grandmaster Sergei Zablotsky. So if you want to book a lesson, for example, with David Fitzsimons, you click, you can choose it by coaches, so here on this page, and then choose the coach and click here on the link book a lesson. Then choose time and day and time. And it shows your current time zone actually, so mine is Asia Novosibirsk. I'll share this link with you. and we will start. Okay. So let's start with our first game, so game number 1, and here your task is to guess white player. e4, c5, knight a3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, so knight f6, which almost any Sicilian starts with this move order, knight c3, d6, and bishop g5. The line is called Rouser variation. e6, queen d2, white decided to castle along. a6, castle queenside, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and queen a5, attacking the bishop actually. f4 to protect the bishop. Then knight goes to d7, maybe not the best option, but it's difficult to suggest how to play. Maybe this move, but then bishop may take here. Well, queen d6, bishop takes c3 if it's possible. Pawn takes c3, but queen takes c3 isn't possible because of queen d8 mate. So yeah, bishop e7 would be a better move. However, knight d7. And this is where white decided to open the position with e5 move. Wait, isn't it a blunder? No, it's not. D takes e5, f takes e5, queen takes e5, queen takes queen, knight takes e5, and by the end of these exchanges, white checkmates on d8. So it's not a blunder. well, okay, so I accept all variations by the end of all 5 games. So I want you to provide me with the list. So e5 is played. d5, black prefers to close the position because they are not developed and their king can be compromised in case if the position gets open. f5, bishop c5 with a temper, queen f4, h6, attacking this bishop on g5. Well, f takes, well, bishop retreats was probably the best move, but white decided to play f takes e6. Well, that could make sense because they can capture on f7 then, and black has no other choice but to take with the f pawn. And this is where they play bishop d3 and decided to sacrifice this bishop. However, this bishop wasn't taken. Let's decide why. Maybe black was too afraid of white player, or maybe didn't calculate it properly. Actually, h takes g5 was the best move, but even this move doesn't offer a winning position, maybe approximately equal position. For example, queen g5, bishop e7, queen g7, rook f8, and h4, white is playing for a win, but at the same time black gets extra piece. So nobody knows who wins. The engine thinks it's approximately equal. That was the best option for black, they didn't do that. And if you think that after h takes g5, bishop g6 can be played, well, yes, it's still possible, but king goes there and I don't really see any attack. Bishop e3, then maybe d4, maybe, well, rook f8, I don't know. I think here black is better. But after bishop d3, I told you, black were too afraid, and they played knight f8, which is definitely a blunder. Rook h f1, threatening with a mate on f7. This time, taking here isn't a good idea. Queen takes, king goes there, and after queen g7 they lose the material. So they can hardly find a good spot for the rook, and if rook h4, it's maybe this move. Or yeah, even rook f8 is enough. So they played queen c7 in order to protect the 7th rank. Can you guess the next move by white? So let me just remind for those who are a little bit late. So our task today is to guess the player. And I demonstrate 5 games and want you to answer who was playing this game. So the first question is who was playing with white pieces in this exact game. And I accept the list of answers by the end of the webinar. Well, if you want, you can write your guesses, but don't forget to send the final list by the end of the webinar. Okay, let's continue. So, did you guess the move? Looks like not. It was knight b5. So white decided to sacrifice another piece. So one piece is hanging, but they hang another one. Well, this time there is a clear idea. If they take, it's bishop b5, and after any of the pieces blocks there, it's a checkmate on f7. So this time it's clear. However, 2 pieces are hanging already, and black here decides to play bishop e3 to distract the queen, and then take on b5. Well, I don't think it's a good idea to sacrifice this bishop. Something like queen h3 here was better because the h-pawn would be pinned, but white decided to play queen f4 back, which was a mistake. H takes g5. The queen is hanging, but bishop b5 first. And this is where black made a critical mistake. They played king d8. After that, they were checkmated. However, there was a better move. They could continue with this, and after queen g5, rook a2, for example, queen g6, king d8, there is a perpetual check, of course. Maybe this move makes sense, but here rook a1, rook takes d1, so I'm not really sure. Queen a5 first, c3, rook d1, king takes d1, queen b5, queen h8, king e7. So I'm not sure that white is winning here, but probably they should be. So you see, you cannot capture on c8 because your own rook is hanging. So you have to play something, maybe rook f3. Well, black instead played king d8, and white continued with a nice sacrifice, queen f8, rook f8, rook f8, king e7, rook e8, king goes to f7, but another check. And then this is actually the line that I'm sure white calculated, and this time they calculated everything properly. King g6, bishop d3, king h5, and after rook h8, black resigned because there is only one move left. King g4, bishop e2, the game is over. So finally, after king d8, the last mistake, white was able to checkmate with this nice combination when they sacrificed the queen. But this game is full of sacrifices, and if knight b5 was okay, then bishop g5 was actually an unsound sacrifice. At a certain moment of the game, it was possible for black to capture on g5. So in this position, for example, after bishop d3, it was possible to take, and then the position would be unclear. However, white defeated black anyway. This second game, I like a lot because this game illustrates one of the variations that I from time to time play myself, and this is what I suggest my students to play. This is where they can get the initiative. So I'm talking about Evans Gambit actually. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, b4, bishop takes on b4, c3, and bishop e7. Well, you know, there are two moves, bishop a5, bishop c5, bishop e7 is still possible, but this is where white easily gets the pawn back. So, of course, d4. And if e takes d4, which always happens in among club players, here you can play queen b3. So you see they have no pieces to defend on f7. Knight h6 is a mistake. The only move is knight a5. And knight a5, bishop f7, king f8. Here you should play queen a4, let them capture this bishop, but you capture the knight and then keep the attack of the king on f7. It's quite important to play queen a4, not queen to d5, because if queen d5 is played, it's c6, and so here you have to move the queen, but the knight is protected. And if you play something like that, it's probably knight f6. Okay, let's go back. Of course, black knew that this is what's gonna happen. That's why they played knight a5 right away. I would play bishop d3 in this position. A white player, actually I want you to guess who was white in this game, played bishop a2. A bishop e2 is also a strong move, so both options are fine. E takes d4 this time. C takes d4 is a logical move, and this is what almost any player would play, but white played queen d4, which is actually another strong move in this position. This is how they attack the g7, and in case of bishop f6, they just push the pawn to e5. Knight f6. e5, of course. This time knight retreats to c6 and queen h4. The idea of this move is not just to move the queen and fall under a discovered attack, but locate the queen on the king side where it's the most helpful. Knight d5, queen g3, attacking here. So castling means bishop h6, and after g6 they at least sacrifice the exchange. That's why g6 right away. White castles, knight b6, and c4. This is a sneaky move. It restricts the knight and activates the bishop to b2. d6, rook d1 to pin the d pawn. Knight d7. They tried to join the knight. Maybe this is a kind of inaccuracy and bishop d7 was better, but okay. The engine says this move is okay. You remember the original idea was to play the bishop to b2, but this time white decided to change their mind and play this move, and that was absolutely correct. This time they are threatening with this. So for example, well, actually knight takes on e5 was played knight a5, and then bishop g7 wouldn't work because of bishop f6, I think. So you play bishop g7, bishop f6, you may take the exchange, but then there is a discovered attack. So in this position you would be, maybe knight d7. So in this position king goes to f8 and escapes. So maybe you may say that white is up the exchange, but don't forget that there are already two pawns that black captured. So bishop h6 is okay, but they sacrifice the other pawn on e5. So knight c3, with the idea of knight d5, of course. f6, c5, undermining. And this is where they could play better. Something like that, or bishop d7 could make more sense, but they played knight f7. They considered that this is a tempo move. Well, it's true. This move is a kind of a tempo move, but white captures there. And if knight h6, just capture the other bishop, which is in white favor, because this is how they also open the e-file. C takes d6, queen e3, protecting here and pinning there. Knight takes h6, queen takes h6, bishop f8, queen checks. And the idea of this strategy was to move the king away. So they decided not to castle, but keep the king on f7. At the moment, they have two extra pawns and two bishops that can successfully cover the king. But not everything is So clear, white holds their initiative and continues with knight d5 move. Bishop e6, knight f4 attacking it, queen e7. How would you play in this position? As white, of course. Knight takes e6, and if queen takes e6, the question is how to play with white pieces. So knight e6, queen e6, and what then? Knight e6, bishop c4, but well, queen takes c4 just. Rook c1 for rook c7 after. Okay, knight e6, queen e6, and then rook c1. I just exchange queens. So rook c7, bishop e7 is okay. And then I try to exchange pieces, maybe exchange rooks. So with opposite colored bishops, there is no victory. Well, after the next move that white played, black resigned. Can you imagine it? Any other ideas? Okay. So let me show it on the board, actually. G4 by Eric, bishop f3. Guys, it's just a rook e1, and there is nothing they could do. Can you imagine it? So how to play? Looks like none of the moves works. You may ask me, what's the threat? Let's say rook e8 to reinforce. Then knight e6, queen e6, queen e6. If king takes, it's bishop b5, winning the rook. If rook takes, it's bishop c4, winning the rook. What other move to play? Maybe this. If this move, it's bishop c4. King goes away, and queen takes e7 for free. If king goes there, it's just queen goes away and a pin of the queen. Bishop h6, maybe. Let's try this move to pin. Then bishop c4, and the queen is hanging. Well, bishop f4 here doesn't make sense. Bishop e6 and queen takes f4, white is winning. So by playing this slow move, white actually decided the game. But this move is a result of the previous actions that took place in the game. And in my opinion, this definitely illustrates a typical playing style of a white player, especially when he was on his peak career. So you see, there are just no moves to play, and well, okay, maybe something like that. Well, if that happened, you can just move your bishop somewhere and then threaten to take, because if now they move their bishop away, You may take and deliver a check and then capture the queen. And okay, so maybe this is a wrong move. Okay, I'll play something. Maybe rook c8. Knight e6, queen takes e6. And then it's bishop g4. Okay, I play rook b8. Rook b8. Okay. If rook b8, it's just bishop f3. The knight is hanging. If knight moves there, it's a check. So knight should stay on that diagonal, but if it goes there, it's queen d4, attacking it. Well, queen c7 then. And in this position, bishop d5 is enough. So bishop takes bishop, queen takes, king goes there, and knight e6. So white calculated everything. In this game, white demonstrated not only the good home preparation and opening knowledge, but also the ability to play aggressively, pressure his opponent, and of course, maybe I just don't know how to explain it, but just a perfect ability to calculate moves and calculate combinations. So that gives you a hint of who was playing with the in the second game with white pieces. Game number 3 is a long game and demonstrates one of the most typical, well, it demonstrates how to play positionally. Okay, guys, so all the answers are accepted by the end of the webinar. So after all 5 games are shown, please send me the list. And a player who guesses all 5 properly wins a prize, which is a lesson with international master David Fitzsimons. So let me show you something. So this is the list of coaches. Recently, David Fitzsimons joined our coaching team, and if you guess 5 of 5 properly, you will be able to get a 1-hour class with him for free. There was also a question if we have any French-speaking players, French-speaking coaches. Julian Nieta, he is Spanish, but now he lives in Mexico. He knows French, and he spent several years in France. So if you're looking for a French-speaking player, you can order a class with him. And maybe the best way is to book a test class. Okay, let's continue. Here I also want you to guess a white player. Knight f6, knight f3, e6, bishop g5. White decided to choose a similar strategy as London system, but this time with bishop on g5. So you see, it's just the same position, and the bishop went to d3. It looks really solid, but approximately equal. Bishop d3, castle. Castle, c takes d4. E takes d4, of course, to get the open file. However, comparing to the position with the pawn on d5, here black is flexible. No, not c takes d4, e takes d4. The e file is more important, and it allows probably the kingside attack in case if there was pawn on d5. When there is no pawn on d5, well, I'm not sure about the kingside attack, especially when d6 can be played and the knight cannot stay on e5. So knight d5 with the idea to exchange bishops, and this knight may also jump to f4, which is quite annoying. Rook e1, bishop b7, and this is where I ask you to guess the move that white played next. So bishop h7, you think? No, guys, bishop h7 this time doesn't work. And I think it's obvious why this move doesn't work. After queen h5, I mean, yeah, bishop h7, king h7, knight g5, king g8, queen h5. It's just knight f6 from d5 to f6, covering h7 and attacking the queen. Okay, so there is a question. Do I know Lukaku defense? No, I don't. If you tell me the move order, I probably will answer. Well, if you tell me the move order, I can tell you how to play there. I just don't know the name, or I only know the Russian name of this opening. Okay, no, it's not bishop h7. Any other guesses? No? Okay, so knight e5, well, queen b3 doesn't make much sense. Knight e5, well, knight e5 deserves attention, but when knight e5 is played, you should be ready for knight f4, and if so, you probably have to exchange on e4, and I'm not sure if it's in your favor. Moreover, knight e5 can be chased away with this move. So it's bishop f1. What? Why bishop f1, you may ask me, well, let's decide. At the moment, the kingside attack doesn't work and is unlikely to work in future. And black pieces are concentrated to attack your king. Knight f4 is coming, which is a tempo move, so it makes sense to retreat with the bishop in advance to get prepared for knight f4. The white player had a really good understanding of what's going on the board. f5 by black. Well, this move is actually okay, but definitely not the best one. Knight e5. Why knight e5 now? Because if d6, then knight goes back, or to d3 doesn't really matter, but e6 becomes a weakness. So after f5, knight e5 is a good move. Queen c7, and well, the king side no longer works. There are no prospects in the center because it's half open. That's why it makes sense to play on the queen side. And the main idea is to play c4, c5 and open the position, open the c file, make the queen the object of the attack. That's why rook c1, rook a8, c4, knight f6, and probably this is where a c5 should be played, but white played it a little bit later. They first decided to increase the pressure with the queen. d6, knight has to go back, but now e6 becomes a weakness. However, knight to g6, rook supports it, and c5 is played now. Well, you may say that this is a kind of a pawn sacrifice, but if we look deeper, after queen a3, for example, they both are under the attack. So this time queen a7 can be played because rook a8 doesn't trap the queen. c5, bishop d5, queen a3. Now the pawn is supported. d takes c5, d takes c5, and why black decided to play knight f4 with the idea to exchange knights, but here they took with the pawn, they wanted to pressure f2. Knight d2, and in this position they played queen f4, which is a possible move and probably the best one. However, you may say, what about this? What can you say about this position, guys? I'm sure both players saw that, and here white and actually black realized that there is a way for white to save the position and end up with extra material. So what do you think? Which move white should play here? So I'm looking to your answers. Rook e3 maybe. Yes, Jinka is absolutely correct. It's rook e3. Knight e4. Well, I didn't calculate knight e4, but I don't think it works. Knight e4, rook f8, king goes there, and queen f4. Then king goes there, take, rook takes, and queen c1. So no, knight e4 doesn't work. Let's go back. So yeah, it's rook e3, and it's not queen to g3, which is of course a blunder after rook f8. You have, well, if you move the king, you just give up the queen. So knight f3, and in this position, well, queen h5 at least. But of course, a better move is this. The g pawn is pinned, and if queen takes, pawn takes, and black is winning. So knight d2, queen f4. Okay, oh. So here rook e3 saves the game, because after this move, the king just escapes to e1. Knight f4, king d1, that's fine. So knight d2, queen f4, the sacrifice wasn't played. And because they both are hanging, queen e3 looks like the only option. And actually, if you exchange the queens here, you'll get the advantage on the queen side, of course. Here, 3 pawns against 2 can be converted into a passed pawn. But black cannot do it on the king side, because the pawns are doubled and actually the kings are quite close. So in the end game, white will be winning. B takes c5, rook c5, queen retreats. Actually, it could make sense to capture the queen first on f4. B takes c5, queen f4, knight f4, and rook takes there. This is what I would play actually, but okay. Rook knight e5, and now you cannot capture on a3. If you do it, then queen g6, threatening with this, and that moves. And if you decide to play knight c4, it's rook c8, pinning that knight. Rook e c1, knight d3. So attacking here and maybe there. So if you decide to take, you are likely to lose the game. Well, maybe it's not so bad. There is no checkmate. Rook c4. No, rook. Okay. Well, actually, I think it's equal. So, of course, white is playing for a win. They are a pawn up. They have a pawn majority that they convert into a passed pawn. However, the material is equal. Black has double pawns on the e file. So queen g3 was played in order to prevent queen g6. Queen f5, rook c7, threatening the mate. So rook f7 is obligatory. They exchange rooks. And now b3, to not blunder the pawn. Knight e5. What do you think what white should do at this position? Any suggestions are welcome. f4. Well, that makes sense. To chase the knight away, yeah, that makes sense. But f4, for example, knight g6, and how would you protect the pawn then? f3, yeah. Here, John is correct. It's f3. Now, if, well, the pawn cannot take the pawn because of rook e5. And this is the next move. Sacrificing the knight doesn't make sense. There is no compensation. So f takes e4 is coming. That's why they decided just to give up the pawn. Oh, that's right. So John and Jinka are both correct, and Jinka was the first. Yes, that's right. I just didn't notice it. So rook e3, and white is a pawn up. Knight c6, knight e4, trying to stop the attack of these pieces. And also, if possible, to exchange rook f8, knight g5. Bishop d3 is a threat, attacking on h7. That's why queen f6. That was a mistake already. The best move here was queen b1. However, this move doesn't really help, because knight e6 can be played. So white still will be winning. So you see here, with almost no tactics, they outplayed black. And finally, in this position, a first tactical strike was applied. What do you think? What white played in this position in order to defeat black? Actually, the game lasted for 10 moves more, but I think after the next move, black should resign. I'm sure they understood the game was over, but probably they just decided to make a few more moves, maybe because of a lack of time for both players and a possible chance that white makes a mistake. But you see, white played really well with almost no inaccuracies. Okay, and here John is first. Let me check. Yes, here John is first. It's knight e6 with a pin by the end of the variation. This is what black missed. Of course, they didn't take the knight. They played this move. However, it didn't make sense, because knight g7 taking the other pawn. And, well, if queen g7, it's a rook hanging on e8. And if rook takes e3, it's knight f5, winning the rook back. King f8, knight e3. I don't know what we should analyze in this position. Let me, well, white is 3 pawns up. Let me just make several moves without explanation, because I don't really see the point of playing this position with 3 extra pawns for white, especially after the queens are exchanged. This is where black resigned. But actually the game was done after knight e6. And even if another move was played, for example this one, still knight e6 and the game is almost over. Bishop e6, rook e6, I don't know if queen a2 makes sense. But, well, what I'm talking about, the knight is hanging, so probably, yeah, 2 extra pawns in this case. But, well, knight d4, rook e1, queen a2, check, king h8, and after queen d6 they are in trouble. So the game is lost anyway. They would be 2 or 3 pawns up. So you see, here white definitely understood why they locate their pieces on certain locations, and almost no tactical strikes were applied. Probably there were some in combinations. For example, they both calculated rook f2, which didn't work. So rook f2 at this position, rook f2 didn't work. They probably saw that, but it didn't work because white is already better and white has enough defensive potential. Maybe there was a tactics with c5. We can call it a tactical strike because the pawn is originally hanging, but after queen a3 then both will be under the attack. So I am sure this tactic could be found by even 1500 player. Okay, so by only playing positionally, white was able to outplay white. The next game, where I also want you to guess the black player, was actually not so long. It was, but well, okay, let's see. E4, C6, D4, D5, E5. So this is the Caracan, the advanced variation of Caracan. This is what I play myself, for example. However, if I play knight f3, bishop e2, here white decided to play bishop e3. Well, we can say that this move is an accuracy, but actually with this move, white wanted to prevent c5. So c5 is quite a common idea. No, for example, this is what I do myself, bishop e2, and if c5 is played, I continue with bishop e3, with the idea d takes c4. Here, by playing bishop e3 right away, they already stop c5, they are going to take the pawn and hold it. e6, knight d2, knight d7, knight g3, bishop retreats, bishop e2, knight e7, so a standard development, and knight h4 with the idea to exchange. However, there is no need to hurry, we can exchange later. So now if d takes c5, it's knight e5 probably. c3, knight c6, knight takes g6, h takes g6. So there was an exchange. Well, white lost their good bishop. f4 in this position closes this bishop. So white also understood it and played knight f3. Rook c8, castle. There is nothing to worry about. The h file, because with the pawn on e5 there can be no attack. a6, g3. And this move is played to restrict black activity on the king side and to start playing on that side. So bishop e7, h4. b5, because white has two bishops, they play on both sides of the board. So a4. Queen b6 supporting it, a takes b5, a takes b5. And then it's hard to suggest a move, but white plays king g2, a kind of a prophylaxis. This move has two ideas. First of all, it's safer and closer to the center. Second, in case if they castle, rook h1 and h5 will be played faster. c4, closing the position. Now white should focus on the king side. Knight g4, but if the king side gets close, they still have the a file to enter. Queen d8. Bishop g4, well, and now they have an immediate threat. They probably want to sacrifice here, then here, and play queen g4. So if something like that is played, then knight f7 would work. King f7, then maybe bishop e6 first, maybe queen f3 first actually. But I like bishop e6, because if not, then it's queen f3. If king goes to e8, it's queen g4 instead. So, for example, king goes there, it's queen g4 with queen g6 on the next move. And there is no defense. Okay, let me show you. So this move. There is a defense. There is this move. But rook a6. Okay, maybe not queen g4. Okay, let's take on d5. And the knight is trapped. So knight a5. And now queen g4 works. So, and if this move, it's probably queen f3 with a mate on f7. Well, it's not a mate, but almost. So white is threatening with some sacrifices either on f7 or on e6. That's why black has to take here. And white gets a bishop pair. Their only task is to open the position. Queen has to move. Rook h1 with a clear idea to open and take the advantage of a bishop pair. Well, some counterplay here, but actually now white applied a tactical strike. Can you guess what exactly was played? Even without this tactical strike, white would win the game. They have a strong pressure with both bishops, and black has almost no counterplay. The only thing they do is attack the b2 pawn. So guess the move for white. White started a combination which was absolutely winning. Okay, so yeah, it's bishop f7 move. Okay, let me please calculate this line properly. Of course, if queen f7, it's just rook takes there. So bishop f7, king f7 should be calculated. Let's go back to the moment when bishop g4 was played and I played rook b8. So knight f7, king f7, bishop e6, and if king takes e6, so that was a good question. Then queen g4, king goes there, which is the only square. Then this, king goes to f8, because if he goes there, it's queen g6, and if he goes there, it's e takes d7. So king f8, e takes d7, gaining one piece. And then starting with something like that in order to pressure and play this and that, so it's a winning position. For a strong player, for example a master, it's easy to realize that there are no chances for black to save the game. And of course both players were quite strong. Now let's go back to the moment where bishop f7 was played. Bishop f7, king f7. Queen f3, that's right. So here if king goes to e8, it's rook h8. If king goes to g6, it's bishop f6 with the idea of queen g4 and queen g7. So let me show you. And in this position, white is completely winning. So king g6, bishop f6, and there is nothing they could do. That's why they played king g8. But this move didn't work neither. King g8 and queen h5. So it's bishop f6. This is the threat. Bishop f6, queen h8, and rook h7. This is what white wanted to play here. So, for example, rook f8 was played, and it's still bishop f6, and they cannot do anything. So the idea is that if this move is played, then then just queen h7 and queen takes c7. If not, let's say if they sacrifice the exchange, they lose the game, because now it's pawn attacking g7. So queen h7, queen h8, queen takes g7. That's the plan. Well, what else can be done? I have no ideas. Maybe let's move the rook away, but it's still the same story with queen h8 here and maybe there. And that's all. That's why after bishop f6 they had to to resign. So you see, this time black decided not to make a few more moves, like for example in the previous game when the game was already over, but black continued playing. Here black respected his opponent and resigned. Okay, so let me give you a hint. These four are world champions. These four white players are world champions. And now the fifth, the last game. That game, well, the players who played it are not so famous as previous 4, but probably you can still know them. In this case, I want you to guess the black player. If you want, you can also guess the white player, but the main task is to guess the black player. Okay, let me quickly check if there are any questions. Not yet. Okay, let's continue if so. So for those who joined us recently, let me quickly tell you what we are going here. So here we are conducting a quiz. I demonstrate 5 games, and your task is to guess who were first 4 white players and the 5th black player. And if you guess them properly, you will be able to get a free 1-hour class with international master David Fitzsimons, who recently joined our online chess school. David is native English speaker. Well, and if you are looking for different languages, most of them speak English. Well, for example, Borolyub Zlatanovich speaks actually 5 languages, but we only included 3 because 2 other are not so popular. He speaks 2 other languages of former Yugoslavia. Oh, actually, you can book a trial class with any of these coaches. I kindly recommend you to try with international master David Fitzsimons. And David, well, looking forward, I can say that David is going to conduct a big course of how to achieve 2000. We will announce it soon, as well as the tournament that we are going to conduct in late October. Okay, let's go back. So in case if you decide to book a class, you can just choose a coach, then click book a lesson or book a test lesson. For example, book a lesson, choose day and time. It shows your time zone. If everything is set properly, it shows your time zone. Then you choose the time. It shows your local time and our time, which is Eastern Standard Time, New York time, in other words. Okay, let's continue with the analysis. Game number 5, the last one. E4, C5, knight f3, E6, G3. So white decided to fiancetta, and knight c6. Bishop g2, knight f6. So e5 is not a problem because of knight g4, of course. Queen e2. Now e5 is a kind of a problem, and black successfully prepares against it. Black plays e5 themselves. However, white wants to do this, and if that happens, it will be in their favor. Castle, bishop e7. Well, it's actually difficult to play. Well, they play c3, but d4 still doesn't work. They need more defenders. Castle, d3. So they decided not to play d4. Well, it's not so easy because if, for example, rook d1 is played in this position, you can just continue with d5 and play for a win yourself. So castle, d3. This is a well-known theoretical position. It's actually well-known among a small circle of players. So not everyone knows it, but people who play Sicilian and people who play this kingside fiancetta against Sicilian, they are familiar with such positions. h6 to stop bishop g5. because there is difficult to find a good spot for the bishop. And the next is the idea of d5, of course. That's the main plan. Knight comes there to attack the pawn on e5. That's why d5 too early. So rook e8, knight c4, and bishop f8. Still with the idea of d5. However, rook e1. And here black had to choose whether to play d6 or d5. D5 still can be played, but the problem is that the pawn on e5 would be hanging. However, that would be a strong pin that black would definitely take the advantage of. However, black decided it's too early for d5 and they play d6. Knight e3, bishop e6. The most common idea for white is to play h3, knight h2, knight g4. This is what exactly they did. And black starts opening the position. So something like that was in black favor, of course. Knight d5, bishop d5. If c4 is played, it's fine. Here, actually, what do you think black can do in this position? Because if they just play bishop e6, I think knight e5 is possible. Well, let me show you something. This, then what? Because knight c6 can be played. Well, I'm not 100% sure, but knight c6 is coming. So maybe take, and if bishop d7, then probably queen c3, and then white ends up with an extra pawn. So instead of bishop e6, there were two other options that black had. So what were these options? e4? Looks interesting, but I didn't think that e4 is playable in this position. e4, c takes d4, e takes f3. No, it's not possible, I think. This, rook takes, but d takes c6, and if f takes g2, I think it's c takes b7. And if you calculate the number of pawns, white will be a pawn up, right? Yes, white is a pawn up. So no, not e4. Yeah, Eric this time is right. It's knight d4. Well, the queen is hanging, and if not, then black is about to exchange on f3. Maybe first exchange the bishops, or maybe both. Both, I think. Well, it's actually hard to suggest a move. It should be queen d1 here. And then probably bishop f3 works. Or maybe bishop c6 instead. Okay, so knight has to take, but bishop g2, the knight is hanging, as well as the h3 pawn. King has to take, and then queen d4. And in case of bishop e3, queen just retreats and then pressures on d3. This is where black is fine. Well, the other option was to take on f3 right away and then play knight d4, which was also good, because knight d4 is also threatening with knight to c2. Of course, both players understood it, and white played knight h2 to continue their idea with knight g4. However, d4, black gets the control over the center. So this is where black starts outplaying white. Knight f5. Queen d7 to chase the knight away, but g4. The good thing about g4 is that now knight g4 cannot be played. That means that the knight will be on the edge for a while, which is good. What do you think black should do? Imagine you are a positional player and try to guess how to improve your position here. Well, there are no tactical strikes, but you can definitely get your position better and then come up with a simple plan which guarantees a small but stable positional advantage. c4 was suggested by John. Well, c4, that makes sense actually. However, if c4 is played, they probably take on c4. Then what? Knight a5? Jinka, may I ask you what your FIDE rating is? So yeah, let's quickly go through c4. D takes c4, then well, d takes c3 is the best here. d3 doesn't look good. Queen e3, then this pawn is the object of the attack, but maybe they'll do something like that, so I'm not sure. The bishop may join. There is a chance black loses the pawn actually. So yeah, actually the correct answer was provided by Jinka. It's d takes c3 with the idea to open the file and pressure the pawn on d3. Bishop f1. What then? Can you guess the second move? This is where black played a small inaccuracy. There was a better move that could guarantee a huge advantage. Not huge, but So if you are almost 2100 on Lichess, you are probably something around 1800 on chess.com, which means maybe 1700 FIDE rated. So you are about 17 or 1800 FIDE, I think. That's good actually. And also elevator cable suggested d takes c4, but no. Elevator cable is 1800 FIDE rated player, maybe even more than 1800. And Jirka was correct. Yeah, so people over 1800 or about it, you're absolutely right. It's d takes c3. Jinka, where do you live so you don't have any FIDE tournaments? Because I think nowadays FIDE tournaments are almost everywhere. Oh, in Bulgaria. Well, I know there are some, not so often. Well, you can travel from Bulgaria to Serbia. There are a lot of opens in Serbia, and they all are FIDE rating. Actually, we have a coach who, I mean, there is a coach working for our online chess school. His name is Nikolai Yordanov. He's a FIDE master. Maybe you know him. Well, if you are looking for a tournament, I can contact him and ask if there is anything where you can play, or you can book a test lesson with him and ask him about the tournaments. So test lessons are free. Yeah, I'm not sure if everyone understood it. If you book a test lesson on Chesslands, the lesson lasts for 20 minutes only, but it's absolutely free. So who did guess the move King h7 to be able to play g6? Well, actually, yeah, there is something in your logic. Yeah, King h7 probably, but I think it's too slow for this concrete position, and g6 is not required. Moreover, at a certain moment of the game, black wanted to take on f5. Okay, so Jack, a new visitor came and suggested a proper move, b5. Yes, this is the best move, with the idea of playing b4, undermining the pawn on c3 and getting the full control over the d4 square. That was the best decision here. However, c4 was played by black, so that is a kind of inaccuracy, but at the same time makes sense as well. The idea of this move was that, well, d4 cannot be played. Something like rook d1 doesn't make much sense. But if d takes c4, it's knight a5, capturing the pawn and pressuring the pawn on c3. The knight on c4 would be quite powerful. Queen f3. Well, this is the idea. So this is where black has to prepare first, and black plays this move. Knight g5 can be played in future. Bishop e3. They cannot protect the pawn, but they attack the one on a7. Knight c4. And bishop a7. This bishop a7 was definitely calculated by black, and black at least could capture on a2. This is what they did, but that again wasn't the best option. However, rook a8, rook takes a2 allowed them to simplify and got a very small advantage, but simplify. So black, I think at that moment was okay to draw the game. But of course they understood that their position is slightly better. Okay, so there is a good question. What if instead of playing c4, it's b5? And d4 in this position. Well, d4 seems to be a blunder. E takes d4. What's then? Because e4 is also hanging. So bishop takes there, rook takes e4, and you're in trouble. C takes d4, bishop f5, g takes f5, rook e4, and looks like white are defeated here. No, of course not. Maybe after c4, d4 could make more sense, but still the same story with this. Maybe actually bishop f5 first, and then it takes d4 and rook takes e4. No, of course d4 cannot be played. So let's go back where we stopped. So here the best move was to play knight g5 or knight d2, or queen c6 actually. Yeah, the best move here was queen c6 with the idea to trap the bishop. If bishop retreats, it's knight d2. They probably have to take, otherwise we take this one. So bishop d2, rook d2, the a2 pawn still dies, the c3 is also hanging, and they can hardly come up with a plan. So rook c2 allows to capture the pawn on c3. They cannot save both pawns simultaneously. So, but rook e8, just a simple way of how to simplify. Well, bishop c4. If not, if bishop e3, it's knight e3, then probably knight takes knight, and then rook a2. The material would be equal, but black pieces are better. Well, especially two bishops. So bishop c4, bishop c4, bishop retreats, and rook a2. Yeah, here it could make sense to play queen c6 and not to capture the pawn immediately. But black was too greedy. They wanted to equalize the position materially and decided to capture right away. The position is slightly better for black, but white is still playing for a win. That was their mistake. Instead, they would better try to exchange pieces and end up with a draw. But they play queen g3. Queen enters white's camp. Two pawns are hanging. Bishop c1. And here black is happy to exchange the queens. Rook c8, attacking the weakness. Protecting the pawn. Now knight g5. Provoking them to take on g5. If so, the pawn on c3 becomes a weakness. But h4, knight retreats there. Knight f3, g5 is coming and is quite annoying. That's why f6, knight f5, rook d8 with the idea to enter the enemy camp and play rook d3. g5, that makes sense. They want to create a weakness on h6 and capture it for free. That's why black captures on g5 and still enters the enemy camp. Rook a3. Well, that is definitely not the best move, and when black played this move, they of course were expecting white to play something like that, which definitely could continue the game. For example, something like this. King g2, bishop b5 to relocate the bishop to c6. So for example, g takes f6, g takes f6, rook goes there to leave the knight. The bishop c6, knight comes to g3, protecting it. And after knight c5, it's knight e1, chasing the rook. So the position is quite complicated. Actually, can we play this move? Because if knight d3, it's knight c3, and takes the rook. Yeah, that was possible. Knight e4. Oh, no, it wasn't, because of this. And then we are down, black is down the exchange. But I still believe the game would end in a draw in this case. But this is where white played a mistake and decided to give up the pawn. Bishop b1, attacking, well, with the idea to exchange and capture the pawn. G takes f6, g takes f6, knight comes to g3. Knight c5, so they cannot protect the pawn on e4. Rook takes d3, bishop takes d3, and they have to give up this pawn. Their only chance is to exchange this knight for that bishop and end in a draw in the endgame with bishops of opposite color. Okay, there is a good question. Let's go back and answer it. After bishop a7, here, can we play b6 in order to trap? Well, I don't think so, because bishop takes bishop takes c4 probably, and bishop takes b6. Of course, you may say, well, why take this? Take the other one. Yes, but I don't really see any advantage for black in this case. So they can even, well, I'm not sure if this is a good option, but something like that is okay. Then they try to play a4 and reinforce. Well, actually, bishop d7 has to be played. Bishop d7, rook d7. Well, I don't really see any advantage. So b6 couldn't be played. Now let's go back to our endgame. So here, knight e4, bishop f4. The knight is hanging. Bishop d5. This is a very clever move. It stops the knight. c4, bishop e6. Now the knight can move, but the pawn is a weakness. That's why they decided to play c5. And that was their last mistake, after which the game is over. Bishop come back to d5. And here, black is actually ready to exchange. For example, in this case, they ready to exchange it. Because if so, they end up in the end game with bishops of the same color, and extra pawn decides the game. King f1, king f7, king e2, king e6, king d3, and f5 to stop knight e4. The last move was f3, and after the move of black, white resigned. So what do you think? What black played in this position? Okay, I see there are some answers. I'm waiting for more. So while you're thinking, guys, I kindly recommend you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let me send you the link, actually. So to my YouTube and Twitch channel. So this is my YouTube channel. I can also send the link here. I'm publishing new videos twice a week. Oh, maybe sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week. So they are quite helpful. If you're looking of how to improve, you will definitely learn a lot. And this is the link to my Twitch channel. And of course, if well, the best way to improve in chess is to hire a coach. For example, when I was a candidate master, I could study chess myself, but that would take a lot of time. So that's why I called my friend who was a grandmaster and asked him to coach me at least until I get a FIDE master title. So and he did coach me. We had one class which lasted for 2 hours, one class a week. And we were mainly analyzing my games, learning openings. The rest of the work I did myself. So I was analyzing grandmasters games, was playing, analyzing my games, also was working on end games. I used the book by Panchenka, which is quite famous, but at the same time quite old, and that's why every solution that is published there requires to be checked with the engine. Okay, so yeah, so yes, most of you are correct. It's bishop takes f3, and if knight f3 it's a check, and king e2 take, then king comes there and takes this pawn. Because this move cannot be played, it's bishop h6. And if they wait, for example, they play this move, take. If they decide to capture the pawn here, then king d4 and the pawn is promoted. So this is how after bishop f3 black defeated white. Well, I don't know if it's important, but a white player celebrated his birthday that day, but unfortunately for him, he lost. So now I want you to guess these 5 players. 4 white players. So let me quickly repeat it. In the first game, there were tons of sacrifices, and some of them, well, at least one of them was unsound. In the second game, there was a good opening preparation, ability to pressure the opponent, and tactical vision. Game 3 is about positional play, with almost no tactical strikes. White defeated black. Game 4 contains no mistakes, no inaccuracies, and demonstrates that a white player definitely understood chess when he played this game. The black number 5, the last one where your task is to guess the player, was played not by a world champion, but also a chess player that I'm sure you know. And the game is actually good. It doesn't contain any mistakes, just a few small inaccuracies. However, the position is complicated, and together with positional understanding, black demonstrated the ability to calculate variations. So maybe their positional play wasn't so good as it was in the game number 3, but combining positional ideas with some long and deep calculations help them to defeat. So now I want you to provide me with the list. For example, the list can be yes, like that. So yes, I'm looking for your answers. Okay, so okay, so who else wants to say? Please publish it. Well, if you tell me who was the white player of the last game, it would be great. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me. Okay, let me quickly check something. So I'm waiting for more answers for maybe 2 more minutes. So, Jack, can you please so tell me where you took this information? Okay, so let me quickly check if there are any answers on Facebook. No, not so many people watch us. Okay, so let me tell you the answer. So, guys, you were absolutely almost all of you were absolutely right about game number 3. It was Tigran Petrosyan, maybe one of the best positional players. And number 1 is, of course, Mikhail Tal, who sacrificed a lot, and he is well known because of it. He sacrificed by intuition, so not all of his sacrifices were correct, but because of his tactical vision, he was able to outplay his opponents. Not every time, he blundered a lot actually, but people know him by his intuitive sacrifices. The game number 2, well, yeah, let me actually show you. Just a sec. This. Okay, so now you see he was playing against Bernard Williams. So it's Mikhail Tal, it's written here. Okay, let me write it. So the first is Mikhail Tal. The second one is Garry Kasparov, who played Evans Gambit. And Gary, yeah, well, is well known because of his calculation ability. Actually, he was the best at all. And he was playing against Vishy Anand. So the second one is Garry Kasparov. Number 3 was Tigran Petrosyan, as I told you. He was playing the game against Mark Taimanov. Mike Taimanov is also a famous grandmaster, was also a famous grandmaster. Once he was a challenger, he played against Bobby Fischer and lost 6-0, if I'm not mistaken, or 6-1. There was a championship match. And game number 4, this is Magnus Carlsen playing against Wang Hao. You see, Magnus did no mistakes. Maybe bishop e3 can be considered as an accuracy. But all other moves are perfect. Together with good positional understanding, he demonstrated the ability to find combinations, for example, here when he played knight g5. And then when he played later bishop f7 sacrifice. So he definitely feels chess, and he, with no doubts, is the best chess player at the moment. Probably the best chess player of all the time. However, I actually still consider Garry Kasparov to be the greatest chess player of all the time. Okay, and the game number 5 is actually the game played by me against Volodar Murzin, who is a Russian wonderkind. If I'm not mistaken, he is a several-time European champion among boys under 18. When we played, he was 14, but his rating already was above 2400. So he was 200 points higher than me at that moment. So how to guess that this game was played by me? Well, you probably know that I play Can Sicilian. So this is a typical setup of Can Sicilian. The other thing that I told you so many details about what Black had in mind when played this or that move, and I also mentioned that it was Volodar's birthday when he lost that game. And you could find this game on my YouTube channel. It was on one of our webinars. So yeah, let me copy the list. Oh, okay, I cannot. So who gets the maximum? So Jack actually guessed 5 of 5, but I'm sure he was cheating. Probably he find somehow the games, maybe on FIDE, on a chess-based database. So who scored more? Let me calculate. Okay, no. Jirka, Tal, Kasparov, and Carlson, Tal, Kasparov, correct. So Jirka gets 4 of 5, which is good. Who else? Forky. Oh no. Okay, let me check. Tal, Kasparov. No. Well, I actually expected Jinka to guess 4 or 5. But actually I see only Kasparov, Petrosyan, only 2. Well, I think it would be well, okay, so it will be how to say, it will be honest to offer 2 classes. So for Jack and Jirka, please message me at school@chesslance.com. So about the classes. And Jack also provide me with an explanation how you guessed all 5, because I thought it's impossible, and I was ready to offer a lesson if anybody guesses 4 or 5. Anyway, if you want to message me, you can message me at school@chesslance.com. So Yeah, Eric was quite close. That's right. So I'm sure, guys, you enjoyed this challenge, this quiz, and well, next Sunday I will prepare something interesting. If you have any ideas of what you want me to cover, I'll definitely prepare it. And I just want to remind you that you are welcome. You are welcome to order free classes at chesslance.com. So, for example, here you go to the main page, click schedule your free chess lesson, choose your coach. Let's say, for example, FIDE Master Nikolai Yordanov from Bulgaria. Choose day and time. You see, they live in different time zones, so you can choose the player, the coach who lives in the similar time zone. For example, I know that Sergei Zablotsky lives he's just 1 hour ahead of me, so if I were choosing, I would choose him, because this time suits me well. It also suits people living in America. So Julian lives in Mexico, so he also offers a good opportunities for people living in America, as well as for European students, actually. And David Fitzsimons lives in Ireland, and these are mainly for European people, but there are still some options for players in America, no, in Canada or the United States. There are still possible there are some possible options, so if you want, you can book a class, and it's actually easy. For example, let's say 1st of September, 10 p.m. So you enter your name here, let's say Victor, your email, let's say it's school at chesslance.com, then your date of birth. So for example, mine is July 10, 1985. So you proceed to a payment. It charges you $2, but we don't actually charge you. We freeze this money, and it's just to confirm that you are unlikely to miss the class. However, even if you miss the class, this money will return to you in 2 or 3 days, or maybe after the session. I don't remember how many days, not more than 3. Okay, so here you enter your card number, and it freezes $2. Then you can get this amount back in a few days. So the procedure is simple, and I'm sure you can definitely come up with it. So let me send you the link. So let me copy this link and provide it to you. Here you can choose either International Master David Fitzsimons or any other coach you prefer. Thank you for your attention, and hope to see you next Sunday. If you have any ideas, you are welcome.